Cooper. Communication- I'm the Communications and Marketing Associate here at Positive Childhood Alliance, North Carolina. We're so excited that you're here and want to welcome you to Webinar Wednesday once again. Just a few things before we get started. This event is being recorded. We ask that all attendees stay muted and hold questions until the end of today's discussion. At that time, you'll be able to speak or you'll be able to ask your questions directly to our panelists through the chat or through the question and answer feature. Feel free to write your questions in the chat so you can remember them for later, and we can also read the questions from the chat at the end of the discussion. And finally, all registrants will receive a PDF version of the presentation, a link to the session recording, and any materials mentioned during the session. We also will ask that you complete a very brief survey of your experience at the end of today's session in our time together. We appreciate your input and your time in completing this survey so we can improve our offerings moving forward. So today you'll hear from local community hubs and the continued work and partnership happening in Western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. You'll also hear how local family resource centers are continuing to support families and how you can join this expanding North Carolina Family Resource Center network. We're glad you're here and we look forward to learning together. Here's a quick look at how we'll spend our time together today. First, we'll start by grounding ourselves in what family resource centers are. Then we'll take a look at what the North Carolina Family Resource Center Network is and how you can get involved. From there, we'll hear real-world examples from community hubs from Western North Carolina. We'll take time to ask your questions and have discussions about those, and then we'll wrap up with resources, upcoming opportunities, and ways to stay connected. So now I'll pass to my colleague Chris to introduce today's speakers.
Thanks, Ashley. Today, you're going to hear directly from leaders across North Carolina who are doing this work every single day, building partnerships and aligning efforts and finding better ways to support families in their communities. So, first, I'd like to welcome and introduce Andrea Clark. Andrea is the Prevention Networks Manager for Positive Childhood Alliance North Carolina, and her position is responsible for coordinating the NCFRC network, the Family Resource Center network. And this network is positively impacting individuals, families, communities, and systems across North Carolina. Andrea earned an MSW from UNC Chapel Hill and a Bachelor of Science in Social Work from the Metropolitan State University of Denver. She is a LCSW who has enjoyed social work, program development, family advocacy, and community engagement work for over 20 years. She's passionate about building resilience with communities, families, and individuals. This includes building resilience within herself, her husband, their princess warrior, 6 young gentlemen, a new daughter in love, and several bonus family members. Next, I'm honored to welcome Erin Drew, the Executive Director of Family Place, the Family Place in Transylvania County, a family resource center serving families with children ages 0 to 18 years old. She brings 28 years of nonprofit experience, along with 4 years of experience as a home based social worker through municipal services, with a strong foundation in multicultural and community based work. Her leadership is grounded in building responsive, relationship centered systems that support families in both everyday circumstances and in times of crisis. And we're honored to welcome Emily Balkin, Executive Director of Children and Family Resource Center in Henderson County. Emily holds a Master of Social Work from Western Carolina University and a Bachelor of Arts in Women's Studies from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She also recently earned a nonprofit management certificate from WNC Nonprofit Pathways. For more than 25 years, Emily has served children and families in Western North Carolina in a variety of roles, including court advocate for survivors of sexual abuse, school-based therapist for middle and high school youth, and school social worker supporting adolescents at risk of dropping out. Emily joined Family Services Director Emily joined the Children and Family Resource Center in 2014 as the Adolescent Parenting Program Coordinator, and in 2021 advanced into the role of Family Services Director before ultimately assuming the position of Executive Director in January of 2026. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. And we do have one more. I'm sorry about that. We have Jennifer Morgan, our program director at Glenwood Family Resource Center. With 28 years of experience as a program coordinator for McDowell County Schools Family Resource Centers, Jennifer has served as the Glenwood Community and expanded services to West Marion and North Cove. Her work focuses on supporting families through every stage of life, facilitating Circle of Parents groups, leading children's programs, providing assistance during times of needs, and offering encouragement through transitions while celebrating successes. Beyond her role in education, Emily is deeply committed to, I'm sorry about that. These got mixed up a little bit. Um, so thank you all for taking the time to join us today for this discussion on um, the NCFRC network. And now I would like to pass to Andrea Clark.
Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to start off this morning with just talking about what is a Family Resource Center and what a Family Resource Center network is. So, what is a Family Resource Center? Some of you already might be familiar with Family Resource Centers, and some of you may be connected with a Family Resource Center in some ways. So as you know, Family Resource Centers have lots of different characteristics are formed by the community. And one of the things that is really neat is that we are advocating across the board, across the nation, for Family Resource Centers to have some dedicated funding, because all of our Family Resource Centers in North Carolina don't have dedicated funding. We have been moving towards a common definition. So the common definition that is now in some of our federal statutory includes what you see on the screen now. Family Resource Centers in general are community or school-based hubs, which Jennifer's from a school-based hub and everybody else is from a community-based hub. And our schools are located in our communities as well. And they are multi-generational, strength-based, and family-centered. They reflect and are responsive to community needs and interests, and they provide support at either no cost or low cost to all participants. They build communities of peer support for families to develop social connections and reduce that isolation and stress for families. And really, all Family Resource Centers are doing across the board too is building protective factors with families, which we know is something that will impact our outcomes long term. Next slide, please. So Family Resource Centers can include multiple different programs. You can see several examples here. A lot of Family Resource Centers also house parenting education, whether that's home visiting. Health screenings can be another example. They can help get connected with all kinds of different resources and referrals, including childcare. They have play groups, fatherhood programs, family counseling. Really, again, they're looking across the whole family and serving all the family's needs. Some have concrete supports, including food banks and clothing and other hygiene items. So you can see there's a variety of things offered, some job skills training, some family counseling. And the important thing is that they are really informed by what their families are needing and providing those services. Even though each Family Resource Center can look different, across the board, there are 4 core components that Family Resource Centers all have in common. One is they have open doors and warm handoffs or family navigation and referrals. So you can come to any Family Resource Center, and if they don't have the service or program they need, they can get you connected with who does have that, or at least help navigate those systems with you. Family activities and education, again, across the board, they're serving all the different family members and having different developmental milestones, helping families understand that, building that protective factor. And then they also are very engaged in their community. that is part of being able to navigate families to the correct resources and needs that may be having, and being able to serve the community as well. So they're really that community hub, that community engager. They know what's going on in their community and helping facilitate that, as well as helping families get engaged and really developing leadership. All families have leadership. All parents are leaders of their own home. And it also helps enhance that family engagement and leadership as our last core component on that slide. So the other thing we know about family resource centers is the return on investment is incredible. It's not just about saving money for our nation, but it is a silver lining that also occurs with family resource centers. And I'll just let you take a minute to look at across this nation some of the return on investment studies that have been done. So you can see in Alabama, for every dollar invested, almost $5 were in return. And then there are several other examples that either double or even quadruple the investment. When we go upstream and work towards prevention efforts, we know that changes generations to come. In addition to being a good return on investment, we also see that there is a reduction in child abuse when there's a family resource center in a community. There are lower rates of child abuse and neglect investigations, and they increase economic self-sufficiency, health, concrete support in times of need, social support, family functioning and resiliency, and really helping caregivers and children with that nurturing attachment. And we wanted to also talk about the impact family resource centers have in schools across the board. We know this can help with family engagement in schools, and it also helps with children's educational success. You can see in Kentucky that 30 years ago, they started implementing family resource centers in their schools, and they were 45th in 1990 in our school systems across the nation. They have now moved up to the top 15 school systems in the country after integrating family resource centers within their schools. They have over 900 family resource centers integrated into their schools now. So that's a little bit about what family resource centers are. We could talk about them all day, but we definitely want time to hear from our amazing panelists. So we'll talk briefly about what is a family resource center network. So a family resource center network is where two or more family resource centers are gathered, basically. Then we have a network, and we have over 80 family resource centers currently in our North Carolina Family Resource Center across over 60 of our 100 counties. So our goal is to get one or have one identified in each county at least, and then continue, because we know we need more than one per county. We need one in every community. We also, in a family resource center network, we ensure coordinated quality supports are available for families and those family serving organizations. And at North Carolina, Positive Childhood Alliance North Carolina is the backbone entity to help leverage and coordinate the collective impact for those families and family serving organizations. Family Resource Center Network's most common functions across the board. This is what an Omni Institute report found, is that we increase connectedness, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration amongst members, provide that training and technical assistance, work on advocacy, policy, and legislation, as well as systems changes, and provide and maintain shared data tracking systems. So we're moving towards that in North Carolina also. So in North Carolina, we have the Family Resource Center Network. You can go on our website and see all the amazing organizations that are in this network. And we also have our mission and vision up here on this slide to kind of see what is our aim in pulling together the North Carolina Family Resource Center Network. We had done a landscape analysis, heard the need, and are excited to be the National Family Support Network state representative for North Carolina. And you can find more information about the National Family Support Network. If you Google that, it'll pull it up, and they have amazing resources for family resource centers and family resource center networks also. This is a little snapshot of our map of where we currently have family resource centers in our network, and we're so thankful for each one and all the impactful work they're doing with families across North Carolina. One other thing about family resource centers is they are incredibly resilient. They are incredible at modeling all the protective factors. And multiple examples of this is during COVID relief. They became drive-through resource centers. They actually went out to communities and brought services to the communities. They help with disaster preparation, response, and relief. So not only during COVID, but during the recent Hurricane Helene last year, we also saw some great impacts. They became distribution centers and so much more, which I won't go into that. We will talk to our panelists about some of their experiences during that response and relief, and move towards hearing from our panelists now. We do want to acknowledge that as we move into this part of our webinar, that there are some images and stories shared today that can be difficult to view or hear, and we want you to pause, step away, turn off your camera, take a breath, drink some water, do whatever you need to do, and then rejoin when and if you are ready. Taking care of yourself is so important, and we're asking our panelists to do the same thing too, because this can pull up some challenging feelings that each of us will have around this. I've cried multiple times while we were preparing for this, so it's also okay to let the tears flow, and it's appropriate. At the same time, this conversation will also highlight the resilience of communities, the dedication of the staff, and the ways organizations came together to support families. Some images and stories may hold both challenge and strength at once, and the discussion will share real lessons learned that could build capacity, strength, and hope, and that is our hope. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and move into our panelist sharing. We're going to start with Jennifer Morgan. And the first question we have today is, what did your organization's initial response look like in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Helene?
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to share about the work that took place and continues to take place in our community following Hurricane Helene. I'm honored to speak on our behalf as our role as a family resource center, and that we played, and it just reinforces the critical importance of strong family support systems during a time of crisis and recovery. The slides that you're getting ready to see, in the beginning, and it will show a lot of aftermath, where we went out into the community and provided resources for families, checked on families after the storm. And then it'll kind of go into our distribution center, where we took in donations, where we worked with families directly. But one thing it will not show is, because we are kind of unique, and I'll go into that a little bit more, is we had an emergency shelter. And we didn't share pictures of that, just to being mindful of the privacy of the people that stayed with us during our shelter. So just a little background, the McDowell County Family Resource Centers, we've been in operation for over 30 years, and we're located in 4 to 5 elementary schools throughout our county. And the stories that I'm going to share with you today is a little bit about the work that was done in the Glenwood Elementary Family Resource Center, which is located in the southern part of our county. And we're situated between 2 churches. We've partnered with these 2 churches since our existence, 30 years ago, since our existence. The larger church, Glenwood Baptist Church, houses our clothing closet and also provides us extra space for big events. And the smaller church, the Glenwood Methodist Church, houses our food efforts and our donations. The Wednesday before Helene hit our county, we received a call to open up our local emergency shelter from our emergency management. And I come to you today to share wearing 2 hats. not only am I the program coordinator for our Family Resource Center, but I also have been trained to operate our emergency shelter, which is located at the Glenwood Baptist Church directly across from our Family Resource Center, our schools. We got that call, and the shelter was open that night. And you can go ahead and start the slides if you would like. So we opened the shelter and we received our first guests that night. Some areas are prone to flooding, so people felt like they needed to go ahead and prepare and come to the shelter and stay, so that they would not be stuck if the roads were flooded. When the worst of Helene struck, we had about 10 people who were staying with us during the shelter, and of course, there's no way we could prepare for what was to come. The storm hit. And while we were at the shelter, we watched the roof of the barn across the road from our church blow off. Trees blew down. The awning of our church blew away. Of course, we lost cell service. We lost power in the building that wasn't tied to, we have large trailer generators that run our emergency shelter. I guess we watched helplessly as roads were blocked by downed trees. Roads were flooded with water. We had a lot of people who were trapped. Those who could came to our shelter. Some only lost power and some lost water. Some lost everything, only bringing the clothes on their back and what they could carry in their hands. They were covered in mud, drenched from where they had been taken from their homes. One of the hardest parts about what we did, not only did we provide an emergency shelter, but we were a hub for families who were looking for their loved ones. So they may not have been able to have contact because there were no cell service. So we immediately began to take down names and numbers of those who were coming in looking for their loved ones and providing that information. And eventually that was taken over by our emergency management and a hotline was formed. And this is just some of the pictures of the damage that we saw at our shelter. This became an overwhelming job, taking in people who were coming to stay at the shelter, also taking down the information of those who were looking for missed loved ones. So we began to partner with our local DSS, and they actually brought staffing in for 24 hours for the whole time our shelter was open to help with that need. Once people were signed in, they were assigned a cot. We tried to keep families together as much as possible. We had a separate designated area for men and for women. Everyone that came through that would like to receive one received a medical assessment. If some people just lost their medication, they lost their medical equipment and supplies. So we partnered with our local EMS, and we tried to get as many supplies in as we could for those people. And then we began talking about our wonderful volunteers, and this is where it really gets into where our Family Resource Centers volunteers and our Circle of Parents groups came out from the woodworks. Volunteers from our church, from our Circle of Parents groups, from our schools showed up. They did whatever was needed, from cooking meals, from sheltering guests, to cleaning, to organizing donations, to helping distribute supplies that are needed. Donations of supplies and meals came from far and wide. There's no way we could have ever experienced or expected what we received. Our current Circle of Parents ladies took over the distribution center, and the young lady that you see in this picture with the baby, she's a second generation Circle of Parents mama who is out helping. We had every space in our sanctuary was filled with donations. Our parking lot was filled with donations. We also partnered with local law enforcement from across the state. They came in and they provided, I have to stop just a minute on that last slide. This is my home for 17 days. It's a little messy. I didn't get a lot of sleep, but this was actually where in the front of this is our sign-in table where people could come in and sign in. Not only did we provide a place for them to stay, but they could come in and just get showers, to get a hot meal, to get any resources or supplies that they may need. But we had those volunteers that came in, and like I said, donations came in from all around. We did partner with local law enforcement because they were as a concern. We had thousands of dollars of donations that were sitting in our church parking lot as we were trying to organize them and get them distributed out. Not only did we partner with them, but we also partnered with our National Guard. They came in and they worked with our local fire department and EMS. We had communities that were completely shut off from communication. So they came in and they actually airlifted families out, and they were brought into us by the National Guard to stay at our shelter. At one point, when they were able to evacuate one community, we had almost 300 people that were staying with us in our shelter. And it was crazy. It was a lot going on. But immediately after Helene hit and things were calmed down and we could actually kind of get out, our community and school staff, they came together and they hit the roads. They made contact with every school family. If they couldn't get them on the phone, they went to their house. They delivered meals and waters and supplies. We also partnered with Old Fort Elementary, which was completely flooded. Everything inside the school was destroyed. Their community was hard hit, and my wonderful coworkers joining by the Zoom. She did an amazing job. But they would come over and they would take the children that were staying in our shelter across to the playground, and they would do activities with them. And that gave the parents an opportunity to have some time to go work on their homes or to contact insurance companies or try to get the assistance that they needed. We partnered with medical staff from all across North Carolina. They came in to provide medical care. We had an out-of-state emergency ambulance crew that came in and they stayed at our shelter, and they provided medical care and transportation to the hospital if needed. Many businesses and churches and individuals showed up to work at our shelter and in the community. We had chainsaw crews that came in from far and wide to clear roads, to clear houses, and to just help out wherever needed. We also partnered with our local animal shelter that manned our cast trailers. We had two of those, and this picture shows we had two cast trailers, and those are mobile kennels, and they were filled with dogs and cats because people could come in with their animals. They weren't allowed to have them inside the shelter, but we had this area for them. And we had volunteers that would come in and help walk the dogs because some people who may have been injured or couldn't physically come out and walk their dogs. So we had volunteers that would come out and help walk the dogs. And I have a funny story because whenever we would give our numbers, emergency management would call in every day and ask our numbers. So we gave our numbers of how many people were staying in our shelter. We gave the numbers of the animals. So we would say, today we have 45 dogs, 30 cats, and a chicken. Yes, we had a chicken that came and stayed with us during our shelter. So that was always the funny story. Everyone came to see the chicken. This shelter was in place for 17 days straight, and I made a commitment not to leave until our last shelter guest had a safe place to go. And I had an amazing co-director who helped work alongside me. And on day 17, we watched our last guest head to a safe place. We didn't have a set date of when we were going to close, but that's how long it took us to get those people to a safe place. Our work did not stop after day 17. Our distribution center stayed in place, and it was open so people could come in and get the supplies and the meals. We partnered with the Baptist on Mission Group that provided warm meals. So when people came through the distribution line, not only did they get the supplies they needed, but they could get warm meals. We also had fresh water that was brought all the way from Louisiana with a tanker truck and two guys that drove nonstop to get to us, and couldn't understand their accent and half of what they said, but they were wonderful and were there the whole time with us. So many people gave of their time and support to ensure that everyone that was touched by Helene had what they needed. New partnerships were formed and continue to this day. There's no words to begin to thank everyone that was involved in what they did. The people that were involved in our circle parents through our Family Resource Center stepped up and they volunteered during that time. They may have been without water, they may have been without power, but they were there showing up and supporting. And one thing that I would like to share is our takeaways that's so important is building those strong community partnerships ahead of time. Train, train, train. Recognize that healing and recovery look different for every family. No single organization can do this work alone, and progress happens when communities collaborate. And one thing is recovery is not about rebuilding. It's about rebuilding hope, stability, and relationships. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's amazing to hear all that happened and all the beautiful collaborative efforts that occurred and are continuing to happen as well. So thank you for sharing. Emily, I'm going to ask you the same question. What did your organization's initial response look like in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Helene?
Sure. Thank you for having me today. Thank you for having all of us. Um, I just want to share a little bit about the Children and Family Resource Center. We have been in the community for 27 years, serving Henderson County and surrounding areas. We have 16 different programs, all free, most offered in Spanish now. Everything from parent education and support to working with early childhood educators and everything in between. All of our programs are rooted in the 5 protective factors, which Andrea mentioned earlier. And we're also really leaning into the HOPE framework and having that lead our vision and purpose moving forward. So that's a little bit about the Children and Family Resource Center. We definitely had a very different experience here in Henderson County. While we did experience a lot of flooding and downed trees, it was not near what Jennifer experienced. The first thing we did while the storm was still kind of happening was just make sure to connect with staff. Are you okay? Where are you? Some had already moved out of the region to stay with family or friends, but we were able to get in touch with everybody while the storm was still going on before we lost cell service. Then, of course, it was a little bit different for a couple days. Our center was very lucky in that 2 days later, that Sunday, we were able to open our doors. We had water, we had power, and probably most importantly, we had cell service. People from the community started coming to our center mostly to try and get in touch with their loved ones. So we were able to open our doors that Sunday. People were able to come and call their loved ones. We ransacked all the snacks from the childcare area and water, and we were giving snacks and water to everybody. Kids had a safe place to play while parents could just relax for a little bit. So that was the original. We opened 2 days later. Not everyone on staff obviously could get there. We have staff that live in all areas. I live in Buncombe County, and Buncombe County was definitely hit very hard. It took me 3 days just to get out of my neighborhood. And we had some staff that their homes were flooded and washed away. And so it was however you could show up was wonderful. And so we had some staff that were there day 2 and some staff that weren't able to join us until later. But those that could, we opened the doors, we served snacks, and then the next course of action was to check in with all of our clients. So any clients, families that were enrolled in any of our programs, we did our best to get in touch with them. So generally around day 3, the roads around here were empty, and so we were able to go out into the community and do wellness checks on families that we had not been able to communicate with. We definitely had some families in our programs that lost everything. Luckily, everybody was unharmed. So we did wellness checks. We started delivering things to our families. We became a distribution center. People from all over were bringing stuff to the Children and Family Resource Center. We had a moving truck come from New Jersey with supplies, and we're like, how did you even hear about us? And so that was really special that people knew a Family Resource Center is somewhere to bring supplies. We also worked really closely with our local distribution center, and the United Way was organizing efforts to provide hot meals in the community. So our staff, if they were not here in our building, they were at the larger distribution center helping to sort and distribute goods there, or helping to serve hot meals in the community. We had a lot of families living in hotels, and so we partnered with local restaurants to provide hot meals in those situations. Snacks and canned goods only get you so far. You need a hot meal every now and then. So we were really lucky that we were able to get boots on the ground and be active right away. We had tons of people show up with donation. We had a therapy dog one day, which was wonderful. So the Blue Ridge Humane Society brought in this beautiful giant beast who was so gentle, and we had just some special time with the therapy dog. He was very sweet. So we really made sure to look out for staff and what the staff needed, and then clients as well. Um, we were one of the first organizations in the county to hire a disaster case manager. So January of 2025, we had a disaster case manager join our staff, and we now have two, and the wait list is longer than ever. We are finding that a lot of the long-term effects, there's, folks that lost their homes that are rebuilding. There's folks that are experiencing mold that they didn't know was there before, or water swelling so that doors and windows aren't closing. So we're working with those families to not only get their homes back up to par, but also to prepare for the next storm, and hopefully that they have safe homes to live in. So I like to share the pictures of the helpers. I think that was the beauty of the aftermath of the storm, is that our communities really came together. I think that most everyone, even though it is a trauma that we experienced all together, we also experienced the joy of really looking out for each other and being able to rely on one another, which was pretty special. And I'm very proud of our Family Resource Center and how we were able to show up, and what that means for us moving forward, which we'll, I think, talk about a little bit later.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate it. And it is good to see joy in the midst of the trauma too. That is so challenging. And Erin, Drew, I'm going to ask you the same question. What did your organization's initial response look like in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Helene?
Okay. So I'm going to start too with a little bit, just the family place is turning 30 years old next year. And it amazes me that all of our organizations, our family resource centers, have been around almost 30 years or have been 30 years. That's way to go, FRCs. And then so we have two locations. We have one in Brevard, and that's our main location. And then we have one in Rosman, which is at the upper end of Transylvania County. And then our outreach coordinator, who works with families in severe crisis, her office is actually located with one of our partner organizations, the Children's Center, the Child Advocacy Center. So, and I want to say that I echo what Jennifer said about partnerships and making sure that you have those, that you're already building those, because those were so essential in our immediate response to Hurricane Helene. And like Emily, it took me a few days to be able to even get to the family place. And so with roads closed and down, and this is our building in the center with the teal colored awnings. A river is behind us, and we're in a flood plain. And so it completely flooded. Right down the road from us is one of our staff members' house, and she and her kids had to be rescued by boat. So I assumed our building would be impacted. I wasn't fully prepared for all the damage that it did to our building. I honestly expected our Rosman site to have much more damage, and our Rosman site really didn't. It had some mulch and some basics and stuff, but our Brevard site was flooded all the way up to our deck, and you'll see it in the pictures. So when we came, this is when I finally got there on Monday. I had my daughter with me, and I'm pulling up, and there's no communication because cell phone coverage is just non-existent. And and I'm pulling up with my daughter, expecting to be the only one pulling up to our building. And I'm coming down the road, and I'm seeing signs on the road, homemade signs, we're open, yes, come in, electricity, hot food. And so I pull into the parking lot, and the staff that could get there were already there. Not only was our staff there, but the Hunger Coalition was already there, set up. They were distributing food in our parking lot. They were cooking meals in our building, hot meals for families. And so that was the immediate response. So when we walk in, so many of our families came in and were already there because they needed a place to come. They needed that place to connect, to share their experiences. and to just reassure each other that they were okay, you know. And so some of these pictures are the damage under our building. Our HVAC system got completely wiped out. Everything under our building, which that's where we stored so many supplies, office furniture, just everything that we weren't immediately using was underneath. And so this is where, again, partnerships come in. The Boys and Girls Club staff, they sent over, I think, 15 of their staff, and they were underneath our building pulling out all of this stuff that from under our building. It was gross, muddy, nasty work. And so while they were helping us do that part, that helped our staff that was familiar with our families to be able to be in our, you know, play spaces and in our family rooms and in the kitchen, working with the families and just meeting them and listening to them. And we had this one gentleman. He came by several months afterwards, and he had this little grocery bag and full of crayons and pencils and stuff. And he said, you know, I was driving by, you know, after the hurricane, and you had the sign that said you had hot coffee. He said, I had no electricity, I didn't have anything, so I stopped by and you gave me hot coffee, and I just wanted to give something back. And that was the overwhelming response with so many people. And like Emily and Jennifer shared, we had churches from Wyoming and other communities sending, you know, us stuff. And it was because somebody from our community knew somebody in another community or something, and people just wanted to help. And so sending, you know, people bringing up distribution items, all of this. And so this is, you know, our staff, the staff that could make it came into the family place. We had other staff that were able to go door to door with some of our, you know, our staff that we couldn't get in touch with. So we're checking on our staff, the ones that could get about. We're checking on our staff and simultaneously trying to check on our parents. And our parents that come to our Circle of Parents group and parenting classes, they were coming in and checking on things in people. And one family, their grandparents had to be rescued by boat from, it was like where they were, it was like a little island. And they had to be rescued by boat. And once they got those grandparents, the entire family came to the family place, and they met up at the family place, and they stayed all afternoon because we had a hot meal, and they could just connect as a family and just be together. And so those are, you know, we quickly turned into, you know, 7 days a week serving hot coffee, hot meals in conjunction with the Bread of Life and the school system. The school system, they had all these meals in their kitchen, and they quickly changed, and they started cooking up all the food that was going to go bad. And so they started bringing it around. They started distributing it to us and to the families that they could get to. So there were multiple responses, you know, immediate needs of food, warmth, shelter, electricity. We were able to get Wi-Fi, and so families were coming there, just trying to get in touch with other family members. We had sections of our community that were cut off, and couldn't, and it took a while to get to this one community. And so it was just, again, just trying to navigate all this, and how do you get these resources to people? How do you get food, diapers, so forth? And that's quickly what we became, is that was our parent room. And it, you know, we just started getting in items. And so people started coming by, and we had to shift. It was overflowing during the day. You know, that room was packed. We had to move some of the items outside, and we set it out outside. And so we had volunteers come in. A lot of our funders came by and said, how can we help? And then they jumped in and helped distribute items. some people that had been trained with FEMA came in and were trying to meet with people to learn how to even try and connect with FEMA and on and on. And so all of these resources, I mean, everything, just kept providing. We had people that would, I mean, you'd take, some of this would be gone by the end of the afternoon. By the evening, we'd have another truckload, refilling this because, I mean, people from all over the country were sending things in and just, giving back to our community. Our playground was, I mean, we had wood mulch and a wooden fence. All of that stuff was, hit by the water. The picnic tables, I don't know if you can tell, the picnic tables that were in our playground actually were lifted by the water, heavy wooden picnic tables, and they were lifted up over the fence. And we found them out in our driveway and all kinds of places. So, through this, we also were connected with a donor and, a family that wanted to give back. And so they came in and helped, redo our playground. A lot of that equipment is his, and he brought it in and helped us completely redo our playground, and then actually paid for us to be able to expand our playground and replace all the fencing and all kinds of stuff. So it was amazing to see the community come in. So the HVAC system. So because so many people and families and businesses were hit, we ended up, so this was in, 1st of October. We didn't get a new HVAC system until February. And so, and I don't know if a lot of you remember, that was a very, very cold winter. But we never closed our doors. We stayed open. In the fall when it was still kind of hot, we had fans. In the wintertime, people started donating, space heaters that, were safe. And so that's how we kept our building heated, to be able to continue with our programming, and so forth. But our pipes froze at one point because we couldn't put the insulation up under the building yet because we didn't have our new HVAC unit and the vents and, all that in. So, but things like that, you don't think about how long you have to wait and how long families had to wait to be able to replace this. Another thing so that's the, before, or that's progress. And then after, our donor, they offered to paint our building, which I was so grateful for because wanted a prettier color after all of this. And so anyway, but the other thing too is, with so much of this work. What I was going to say was our parking lot. It was also a place where all these other organizations came and parked, and then were able to walk down because there was a mobile home park, just right on the other side of another house beside us that got just totally flooded, and all these homes had to be lifted up and all this work done. So it was, a parking space. We gave them food. We gave them, place to use the restroom and all kinds of stuff. So again, it's truly one agency can't do it all, like what Jennifer said. We've got to pull together, and it was truly a community effort, and it continues to be, because even now, some of those mobile homes still haven't been repaired, and families still living in homes that have mold and so forth. So it's still working with those families to get the resources and help that they need, even after all this time. So it's still an ongoing effort. But that was, I mean, so our staff was, we jumped in to respond to the needs of the families in the community, while also trying to recover, as an organization and individually for some of these families. So it was a lot, and but I can't say enough about our staff and our community partners, because everybody jumped in and really pulled together to respond and to help support the families. through this process. So.
It is amazing. Thank you so much. I know we talked about even when we were preparing this, we need like a year-long webinar to be able to even touch on all the things for the 3 organizations represented today. And there are so many other family resource centers that were also responding. And it's amazing across North Carolina, the resiliency and the impact that family resource centers are doing. We'll have even in the follow-up email another example of an article from Appalachian State University and some Alliance members that did an article on preparedness with children with special healthcare needs. So there's so many different resources and information out there that we just barely touched on today. But as we're wrapping up, I did want to see if there's any kind of final words that any of you want to say. I'll start with you, Erin, since we ended with you, and just any other lessons learned or anything to wrap up today.
Well, and that reminded me, I'm glad you said that because one of the families, I'll just say this, is one of the families that came and stayed with us from the time that, anybody got there in the morning until late at night. She brought her child because her child was a special needs child that had, ADHD, hyperactivity, autism, and so forth. Very, very, very active child, but they had no electricity, no running water or anything. And she needed a space, a safe space for him to come during the day that he could move, so that when they went back home to their home at night that had no electricity, none of this, he was able to lay down, be exhausted, and go to sleep. I mean, that was the space for them. And so just thinking about that with so many other families that are in the same situation in the special needs and that are needed. So thinking about that and then also having some of those quiet spaces set aside for the children that are overstimulated and so forth, just providing, those spaces. So that's one piece to think about. But also, how are you going to communicate? I mean, when the internet's down, when you can't reach people, have a plan, made ahead of time with your staff. Like, how are you going to touch base? How are you going to check on one another? How are you going to communicate? So, I mean, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me as the director, is just how to communicate with everybody in this kind of situation, and then how do we quickly respond? So.
Totally, that makes a lot of sense. Emily, we'll go to you next. Are there any lessons learned that you would like to share with us?
I want to echo the families with kids with special needs. I think family resource centers are uniquely poised to address issues that maybe aren't addressed by some of the larger disaster response organizations. And one family that was referred to us had a child on the autism spectrum disorder that was a flight risk. He would often run away. He was 8 years old, and their fence was destroyed in the storm. And a fence was not a priority for so many amazing organizations coming together to rebuild homes. A fence was not a priority for them. But this family was referred to us, and we were able to connect with Baptist on Mission, another organization, and with the help of the family rebuild the fence, we were able to use some of our flex funds to secure a really protective gate that this kid could not escape from. And that piece was so important for this family to really feel secure. And it took a while to get there because it wasn't something that would have just naturally been addressed. I will say that the other thing that I forgot to mention was, in a lot of cases, families couldn't get a hold of 911 because the lines were just flooded, also lack of cell service. And so in many instances, we were the first contact in the community that families had. And so being able to have a calm presence and showing up and checking in with them, what is it that you need? What supports do you have? I love that Jennifer and Aaron both mentioned like families coming and actually volunteering as well, to support. And again, it was just beautiful how everyone came together. But I definitely, at our local disaster response partnership, disaster recovery partnership, we had the American Red Cross there, and the representative said, when the next storm happens. And it really got me thinking that there will be a next storm. And how do we work with our community to strengthen these families to better handle and live through the next storm? So what do we need to do to secure some of these floodplains? What do we need to do to make sure that childcare centers have generators? And what are those communication plans? And I think we did a really great job as a community coming together. Of course, we can always learn and do better next time. And so I think that it was a great learning opportunity, and so many strengths came out of it that when there is a next time, that we'll rally even better.
Thank you, Emily. And Jennifer, you touched on a few. Are there any other lessons learned that pop up for you?
Just like we said, just that communication, that having those plans in place and those partnerships is very important. And as Aaron and Emily both said, we also had an opportunity to provide some assistance this winter. And we had a family with a child with special needs who could not go without power. They came and stayed with us during the storm. Some people, they didn't really think about taking those emergency medical supplies with them or the medical supplies that they need every day and some of the equipment. So we were able to build those connections and those communications with some of those families so they know that if something were to happen again, that they could reach out to us and we can try to help them and provide them that support with if the power was to go out, but just having those connections and those partnerships in place and do the extra training that you may think you don't need, you need.
So true, so good. I was sharing that I want Jennifer's family near me if there's ever a disaster because they are prepared. They're amazing crew.
I have to share back in the slides, there was the picture of, I didn't share that. There's a lot I didn't share, but we are an emergency services family. My mom, I grew up in emergency services, so it's in my blood. And I guess that's how I became involved with so much of it. But my husband's a firefighter, my son, my daughter, they're all firefighters, emergency. But the pictures that you saw of the water rescue is my son and my husband in those pictures. And of course, I had no idea where they were at. We were separated out working in our community. So I didn't know what they were doing. And whenever those pictures came into me, because they were rescuing people out of trees, off the roofs of buildings, out of cars that were trapped by floodwaters. And to hear the stories of their boat getting stuck on road signs because the propeller got stuck and they were trapped and they had to rescue themselves, and not knowing that, it's probably a good thing. And I was sharing during our training, my daughter was actually trying to get to me at the shelter. A tree fell in front of her car and behind her car, and she was trapped. And luckily, my son was nearby because he was helping do some tree recovery that day, removal, and that was during the middle of the storm before they did the water rescues. So he was able to get to her. So yeah, there was a lot going on, and it definitely took a family and a community effort.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I will say one of the lessons I learned through it is the importance of networking also that I hear y'all saying. And I think it might have been you, Aaron. I don't want to misquote, but that when we talked afterwards, you were like, it was so important, those relationships we built through the NCFRC network, because a lot of distribution centers, family resource centers changed into distribution centers, had tons of blankets or tons of formula, and the others had none. And so being able to network with each other to say, we have this, you have that, really paid off. And I like to say, let us be your family resource center for the NCFRC network. And so I was on the phone. I remember amazing organization, High Country Caregivers, talking to them during the immediate response. And in Swain Family Resource Center hardly had cell service, but just getting a hold of the organizations in the network to make sure you were okay and hearing your voices was so impactful, as well as hearing High Country Caregivers was just out there taking down trees to get to their families to do a head count too, which I heard many of you share as well. So amazing work. I am amazed every day by you all. And again, just want to continue to sit at your feet. Yes,
Can
Erin.
can I jump in? So when you think about community collaborators and partners, I want to make sure and not overlook your funders, because there were so many of the foundations around us that, that said, what do you need? We needed money to replace our HVAC system. We needed money to replace our playground. We needed money to, get the electricity, checked out, all of those kind of things. And at one point, I sent in an application for funding, and they called me and said, Erin, you're not asking for enough. We're sending it back. And, and they did. And we asked for more so that we could get our sump pumps replaced and just all kinds of stuff. So don't overlook your funders and those partnerships, because I have to give them kudos. They responded immediately with funds. Anyway, so we couldn't recover without them. So.
I just want to echo that, because like I said, our Old Fort Family Resource Center and with Kimberly, they lost everything. The whole school lost everything, and they funders immediately stepped up and started that process of helping them rebuild not only the school but their Family Resource Center and their community.
So important. Thank you. Well, I'm going to check in. Oh, go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, I remember you all reaching out and saying, how are you? What do you need? So very appreciative.
Yeah, I think the amazing connection between everybody was felt and continues to be felt as acknowledged. There's still so much work to be done, and y'all are still doing such great efforts. I believe somebody in the background was gathering questions, so I have a couple other, but want to check in and see if there were other questions that have come through the webinar.
Hey, we haven't had any questions come in the chat yet, but now is the time. If you do have questions that you would like to ask of our panelists or of Andrea or anyone from PCA&C, feel free to pop those questions into the chat now.
Thank you. Well, as they are coming in, we did hear some of the biggest challenges and strengths that were there, but were there any other strengths that emerged through this experience, or challenges, if you want to share any others? And I'll start with Emily.
I can share. We have a fairly large Hispanic Latino population in Henderson County, and many of those families were not eligible for FEMA, often are renting, and so didn't have home insurance, things like that. And so obviously that's a challenge, and that's a big part of what our continued disaster response work looks like, is helping those families get stabilized. But I think the strength that came out of that is that we were a safe place for them to turn, to look for help. So even if they were, hesitant about showing up at the FEMA distribution center, they knew they could come to the Children and Family Resource Center and get what they needed. I mean, we can't provide everything to all people, but just some security and some connection would go a long way. So that was definitely a challenge, but also a strength that we were that safe space for those families.
Thank you for sharing. So important that we serve all families, and a strength of Family Resource Centers too. Jennifer, anything else that comes up for you as far as strengths or challenges? So many beautiful examples were shared.
I think one strength that we saw that that's a partnership that was strengthened and maybe built was with our local DSS. Sometimes we have that negative and not the positive. And they really stepped up and really made the work that we were doing possible with serving families, because they took on that role of getting information and checking with families and helping hand off what resources they need and what they may need at the time. And they definitely made it possible for me to sleep about day 5. So, but definitely our partnerships with DSS, just like Erin said, with our funders, donations coming in, monetary donations to help get people back in their home, just to do what we needed to do to help families was so important. So I think that, and challenges is there was just so many people without, and so many people that had needs just to get into their homes, back into their homes. And with, especially we had a large, group of people that just needed medical care. So I think that was probably some of our challenges.
Thank you. Erin, any other strengths or challenges you wanted to share?
I just, again, seeing our parents, so many of our family members, and the way that our staff was also relaying how they were checking on each other. They built that network, they built that support, because some of them don't have family in the area, but they had one another. And so it was going and helping and watching each other's kids to try and, move out, things and so forth. And so again, those relationships and friendships were established by coming to the Circle of Parent group and by coming in for playtime and all this kind of stuff. And that network was built and established there, and how it continued out in emergency, that they were looking out after one another. So, a seed was started and it grew. So, just can't say enough just enough about the good work of Circle of Parents, of FRCs, and that being that connector point for so many families.
So huge. And again, another strength of Family Resource Centers, right, is that family engagement and leadership. And our families are leaders, right? And so I love that. I think a couple of questions came in, so I'll check in with Chris again, and then we'll begin wrapping up after that.
Yep. We had one question come in from Stephanie. She asked, how did you identify and make the initial connections with the local distribution centers in your areas?
I don't mind jumping in. One of the churches that was already a place where families could go pick up items and so forth. They had been trained in disaster relief, and so they just did what they were trained to do, and so they really developed. So we made connections with them because they're right down the road from us, and so it was a matter of us, connecting with them, supporting. It's, literally right down the road. So we're working with them. They would send items to us because some of our families aren't going to go down to them, but they will come to us. And so it's just that relationship and, getting that started. That's how it was for us anyway.
I can also jump in. It was our local United Way who started the disaster distribution center. And it was just in a building that was under construction, a warehouse, literally, like I could probably throw a frisbee at it from our center. It was just a big empty space that big trucks could come through. And since we're partially funded by United Way, we were just automatically wrapped into that. And same as Erin, we ended up being the diaper and formula place for sure. And so when they got diapers in and formula, they would send it our way, and people knew that they could come here for that. And again, specific needs of our families, we were able to go to the distribution center and get what they needed and either deliver it to them or bring it back to the center. So ours was our local United Way.
And Jennifer, your church looked like it was a distribution center, but anything you want to add to that?
It's funny because that was not the intention, and our first tractor trailer showed up at 3 o'clock in the morning to unload. I'm not even sure where he traveled from because literally we had lines of vehicles and tractor trailers and box trucks to donate supplies. And so, like I said, our Circle of Parents ladies, I went to them and I said, "This is something we want to take on and tackle, and I can't do it." And they, oh, I'm on, and they just did. They took it on, and I'm not lying when I said every single space of our sanctuary. It's a large building. The hallways, the Sunday school rooms, the sanctuary itself was filled with supplies, and they did an amazing job of organizing it and make sure that it was redistributed back out. Not only did we distribute supplies to people that came through our line, but we also shared with other partners. We had some partners in Rutherford County who were in desperate need in our Lake Lure Chimney Rock area. So we were able to get into them, get some trucks would come in and take supplies to their shelter, to their families. Also with our neighbors in the north who couldn't get supplies in with the large trucks. So the large trucks would come to us, drop off their supplies, and then we would get them into smaller trucks, and then we have families partners who were taking that stuff out to them too. So we didn't just serve McDowell County, we served surrounding counties with our distribution center.
And to echo on that, like some of another organization that's a little bit smaller staff, they only had two staff and one couldn't get in. But the director wanted to help. So like she went and raided their closet of diapers, wipes, all that kind of stuff, and she brought it over to the family place and distributed through there as well. So it truly is that sometimes it's just grassroots. It's people come to what they're familiar with, or they're driving by and they see it and access it. So, and word of mouth. So,
You reminded me of something when you were talking about rating. There's no way you could possibly prepare for 300 people to provide 3 meals a day, showers. One partnership that we never would have even considered or thought about is our school because they were shut down and they were losing food. So they actually got up, the cafeteria workers got up every single morning and prepared breakfast and lunch for our volunteers, for the people staying in our shelter, for staff, the people that were going out and taking meals to the schools, to the students who didn't have power. So that was an amazing partnership to see them to get up, and the school provided all the supplies. So we knew we had breakfast and lunch provided for every day for our community. So that was an amazing partnership to see that happen.
Again, I feel like we could hang on this call for for a year. And it's a beautiful example of the resilience kind of moving forward. I know y'all are already and continue doing amazing work in your communities and the organizations that you serve and collaborate with too. So thank you so much for those fantastic examples. I'll hand it back over to our communications and marketing team. And if there are any other questions we missed, please circle us back on those too.
Thank you so much, Andrea. We are reminded today that the solutions are within the community, within all of you. And thank you so much to Erin, Emily, and Jennifer for being here today and for being a reminder of the hope and resilience that exists within our beautiful home state. We are inspired by you and grateful to have you here with us today. If there are any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. We will continue to watch that for the next few minutes. I am not seeing any right now, though, so we will keep going. We hope that this conversation has inspired you to stay connected, connect with other members of the Alliance in your community, and to continue working towards your local impact. Many of you are already part of the Alliance, and we're so glad to have you here and part of this work. If you're not a member yet, we invite you to join this connected statewide network using the link on the screen, the QR code on the screen. That is an opportunity to connect with the network to advance child and family well-being. And for those of you who are already members, we'd love your help in growing this movement. You can consider sharing the Alliance with your colleagues, partners, and others in your community who would benefit from being connected. And of course, we hope that you'll continue to show up, learn, and grow with us through the many opportunities we'll have coming up soon. As we finalize planning for the new fiscal year, we encourage you to visit our training and events calendar to stay up to date with what's coming up and register for anything that inspires you. That QR code on the screen right now is the link to the training and events calendar, and that's where you'll find all of our trainings. And finally, before we wrap up, we'd love to hear your feedback on today's session. Your input helps us keep improving and ensures that the network continues to meet your needs. Please take just a couple of minutes to complete our quick survey. You can scan that QR code on the screen, or we will drop a link in the chat to that survey as well. We will give you a moment to open it up and get started. And we do really appreciate your feedback that you give us through that survey. Perfect. That link was now in the chat twice. Thank you, Chris.
You beat me to it. Thanks.
All good. Awesome. Thank you so much. We are so thankful for our panelists, to Andrea, and for all of the time that everybody has brought today. Your dedication and commitment to supporting families in North Carolina, we are so grateful for. And we appreciate all that you do to help create a world where children and families can live purposeful, happy lives with hope for the future.
Great job, everybody. I will say there were a lot of goosebump moments. So thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and just sharing your stories. Yeah, I came over here and brought my computer to my husband and said, "You have to listen." So he did.